at the end of the season when the club said we're going to offer all the players under 22 a contract. I thought that's saying to the youth, look, you're what we're going to build on for the rest of the year going forward and into 2019.
Yeah.
And obviously we need them more experienced players in there to guide the kids round because they're going to need that. So it was nice that the likes of Cahill signed and has become made club captain. I think then big positives that have come out of what has been an absolutely awful 2018. But for me, 2018 is now, it's done, it's gone. And we've now got to look at the positives of what we've got. We still need a few new players in there. We've got a new man in charge, and we've got to back them now. We can't be, we've done this, we've done that. We need to get bums on seats. We need to get behind the team, and we need to support them, because otherwise, without the support, you can't build a club.
Yeah, it's about the now and it's about the future. So that's a good way to wrap up the 2018 season review. In fact, thanks for going through those troubled memories with me, Paul. So, James, welcome to the Super League pod, and we've got you on kind of to deal with the Widnes Vikings with your two hats on, one the Rugby League journalist side and one the home and away supporter of the Vikings. I want to touch on with you some of the off-season movements. Widnes have been the busiest club in the off-season. Does that sound like something that's good?
Yeah.
Right, well, we'll start then with the new coach, Kieran Purtill. It's possibly the biggest news that's happened so far. He's joined from the Leigh Centurions. Now, we know he has some good winning experience, an assistant with St Helens and Huddersfield, and he had some experience with the England Knights. Now, last year in 2018, he did a really good job with Leigh in a difficult position, which has given him vital championship experience as well. So what do you think of the coaching appointment at the Vikings?
Yeah, I think it's a sensible appointment. I think it probably turned into the most obvious appointment for Widnes, because there was some doubt over what was happening at Leigh, and it was clear he was probably there for the taking. I think if you look at what he did at Leigh last season, he went in at a difficult time. They'd had a really poor start, and he won a lot of games in that first phase of the season. And if it wasn't for the extra Toronto game that they had to play in the summer bash, they would have made the top four, and things could have been very different both for him and for Leigh. So he proved in Championship last season that he could win games, albeit with a Leigh team that probably should have been winning games anyway. I think the most interesting thing about it is perhaps his experience as an assistant at Saints and at Huddersfield, and also with the England Knights, in terms of developing academy players and younger players, because we know that of the squad that Widnes have got, I think 17 have come through the club's academy, and certainly there's some very young players in that team. So it'd be interesting to see how he develops them on. Another interesting point is that they've already got 24, 25 players signed up, so it's very much he's going to have to go in and assess what he's got. Probably doesn't know a great deal about a lot of the players that are in that squad, so it'll be interesting to see.
Side, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's one thing having a young side, it's another thing having a side where you've got a lot of players that you've probably never even watched before. So it'd be interesting to see whether there's any movement from him after having maybe a week. I know they started training on Monday, and it'd be interesting to see if there's any movement based on his reaction to what he sees in the first couple of weeks of pre-season.
I know you're sort of putting a bit of cold water on things, being a bit sensible about things, but overall I'm guessing you're quite happy with this appointment, of the kind of options that were out there available for a championship side to go and pick up.
I think it's always difficult. I think when any coaching job comes up, I think there's never a wealth of options for anybody. I think you only have to look at the number of rookie coaches there's been in Super League over the past maybe 6-7 years. You're looking at Kieran Cunningham, you're looking at Laurent Freycinet, you're looking at Lee Radford, and those three are probably a good example of three that have had a varied success. And I think it's even more difficult for the championship teams, if you like, to find an established coach. I know, there's talk about Tony Smith, Brian McDermott, and people like that, but I just think that's very unrealistic for a championship club now to attract those sorts of those sorts of coaches. I know obviously McDermott's gone to Toronto, which is a bit of a anomaly in that discussion, but
that's
I think
it's with
Yeah, a lot of money.
Bucket loads of money, whereas Widnes are a bit more in control of the budget these days, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the probably one of the main reasons why that's gone the way it has. But I think it's a lot easier now, I suppose, for Championship clubs to attract because you've at least got that chance of promotion. So, you know that you can. You look at London Broncos. Danny Ward's had that job for a year and he's gotten promoted, and it's like anyone could effectively. If anything, it's now easier to replicate what he's done because there's a cast iron guarantee that a Championship team will get promoted to Super League this year.
Yeah, so possibly, the first thing that is facing Perth Hill is the rebuilding of the squad. I want to ask you what your opinions are on some of the people that have left, first of all, following the relegation. So Herremeyer and Howson have retired. We knew that was coming from much earlier on in the season. But Whitley and Walker, they've gone to stay in Super League with Catalan and Warrington, respectively. Mellor and Alberson, they've actually moved to promotion rivals Toronto, and then Dudson, who we now know is at Salford, Hanbury, Arvan, Lloyd White, Charlie Runciman, Alex Gerrard, and Stephen March, they're also out of the door, so they're kind of a lot of the core of the team from the last 2 to 3 seasons. So is there any of those departures that you're particularly concerned or disappointed about?
I think the Mellor and Alberson ones are probably the most disappointing because I think you couldn't have blamed either of those players go into Super League teams, but I think the fact that they've moved sideways to Toronto is perhaps a little bit of a blow because, the financial packages that Toronto put together are no doubt far superior to what Widnes have got. I think Alberson probably more so than Mellor because Mellor's put a good service in for Widnes, and Widnes have had him since I think it was 2010 when he first came on loan from Wigan, and he came on loan again in 2012, and then he's been permanent ever since. So I think I think I'm less.
And his player has given you some good times as well.
I think it's probably, if you probably look at Joe Mellor's career, it's probably like he probably needs to freshen up a little bit. Alberson, he's only been at Widnes a couple of seasons. Widnes sort of picked him up from Bradford and give him that Super League chance. So I think a few fans are probably a bit miffed that he didn't. Like I say, I think if either of those two players had gone to Super League teams, I think you would have said fair enough. But I think the fact that they've stayed in the same division and just gone to Toronto is a difficult one. So yeah.
And Matt Whitley and Danny Walker are the only two real sort of young guns that have come through the system that have been lost. Do you think they deserve to be in Super League, do you feel, with their qualities that they've shown?
Yeah, I think it was always going to happen, especially with Danny Walker. I don't think you can really knock either of those players for taking those deals. That's just life, and I think the way Widnes are at, they need to be developing more and more players, and ultimately you are going to lose players, but they'll have been compensated appropriately for both Whitley and Walker having offered them deals. So I think that's ultimately, certainly for clubs of Widnes' size, that's where you've got to go moving forward. You've got to be producing your own players and then be able to either benefit from having them in your team or benefit financially from them moving on elsewhere.
Well, the retained list is quite lengthy as well. Widnes got Bisley to business there. I'll just reel off the names and ask you to sort of comment on any you think are standouts in this list. So Ashall, Bott, Buckley, the Chapel Howe twins, Wellington Albert, Sam Wilde, Harrison Hansen, Cahill, who's going to be the captain next year, Brand, Farnsworth, Walsh, Christine, Johnston, Gilmore. They're the sort of players that were in the side last year that have been retained. So who jumps out from that list that you're particularly excited about the side keeping?
I think keeping Cahill's probably. I think the two for me are Cahill and Christine. I think they're probably the best standard players that they've retained. I think the thing with Cahill is he's a bit like he runs through brick walls, so that encourages other people to run through brick walls. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, his work rate stats are phenomenal. The amount of carries and tackles he does per game.
Yeah, the only slight issue with him is getting him on the field every week, because I think he probably. But then, having said that, the way he plays, if you could have him for 20 out of 30 games a season, I think that's a result. To be honest, Christine's an interesting one because it was one of them. I thought he probably would have got a Super League deal somewhere, but he had a bit of bad luck last season with injury. But certainly on his day, he's been a good player for Widnes, and I think he could it's interesting because it'd be interesting to see whether he plays in the back. He's sort of been morphing into a back row last few years, but given Widnes's sort of lack of centres at the moment, maybe we'll see him play at in the centre next year. In terms of the younger players, obviously everyone was sort of raving a bit about Ash Orbot towards the back end of last season before he got injured against Salford. He's obviously an exciting prospect and will probably take over the number 1 shirt from Hanbury. Owen Farnworth's one that I like the look of a prop. He's played a couple of games for the first team, but I think he's got big potential. And there's a couple of others that I don't think was in your list, but Brad Walker and Liam Walsh are both academy players who've maybe played 1 or 2 first team
Walsh
games.
Came in, didn't he, to play some games towards the back end of the year? No, Brad Walker wasn't on my list. No.
Well, they've both played
more than I realised.
Yeah, they've both played a handful of games, and I think they're probably, if you were asking who are most likely to be the next Whitley and Walker, Whitley and Danny Walker, I'd imagine Brad Walker and Liam Walsh should probably be near the top of that list from the academy players that Widnes have got at the moment.
The slightly strange one on the list for me of all of them was Wellington Albert, because he didn't seem to be wanted in the Super League in 2018. So what do you think's changed there for him to get a 2-year deal, a classic Widnes deal?
Yeah, it is a funny one with Wellington, because there was a lot of noise made about signing him and his brother, and the Papua New Guinea thing with obviously Otto dying and all that. There was a lot made of that, and he never really burst onto the scene because he had to wait, and then he had a couple of appearances and scored a couple of tries against St Helens, but it was a surprise
because
he
basically and never came back. It felt like.
Yeah, to be honest, he barely featured at all last season. Even when he was in this team, he maybe only that game you mentioned where he got sent off against Huddersfield. He sat on the bench for 60 minutes. He's come on, made 2 tackles, and got sent off. And it's just like it was a bit of a strange situation, to be honest. I think he's a player that the fans get behind, and certainly with the ball in hand, he's very attractive in terms of he runs it up and he drives, he gets his arms free. He's basically what you want out of a forward going forward. I think the issue with him was his defence was a little bit suspect, and sort of the way that Widnes was set up, certainly under Dennis Betts, they can't afford any passengers in that middle area of the field, and I think that's what he sort of turned.
Defending in the rest.
Yeah, and I think that, and so in many ways, I think he's probably more of a victim of the system than anything else. Being brutally honest, I don't think he's a Super League standard player. I think he'd probably do well in the Championship. So it'd be interesting to see. I think if you've got him on the bench, coming on, I think that's a real boost for Widnes for next season. But like you say, yeah, it is a bit of a strange one that he's sort of gone from not playing for half a season to then getting a 2-year deal, especially when you look at the number of 1-year deals that Widnes have handed out.
Yep. But also some other signings that have been made. Adam Tangata and Liam Hood have come in from Halifax and Leigh respectively, so that's signing some Championship players, and now's where you can really give us some insight, I think, James, around a couple of other question marks. Maybe the biggest question mark over Widnes' squad for 2019 probably remains their splash signing for 2019, Anthony Gelling, and then also it's bubbling now on the rumour mill that Jack Owens is back in I was reading on your own site actually on Love Rugby League that Jack Owens is back in training with Widnes now, and maybe there's some other new signings in the pipeline that you could let our listeners know about. So what do you know about Gelling, first of all?
So, the Gelling situation's a very strange one. I think he obviously signed back in July. I don't think many people would have expected him to come if they were in Championship, but I think where the not confusion, but you sort of, like you said, like you're intimating, really, there's not been a yes or no either side. I know James Rule's been out. I think someone specifically asked him at a fan event, is he coming if we get relegated? And he said, yeah. There's been an article, I know Aaron Bauer did an article with James Rule, and again, he said, yeah, he's coming over. I went to the press conference with Kieran Purtill. I asked Kieran Purtill. He said they were very confident he was going to be in the squad. I've spoken to a couple of people at Widnes. They're very confident that he's going to be coming over and his visa's getting sorted and all that sort of stuff. But
He shouldn't
there's
need
still
a visa, should he? He thought he got his British citizenship